Hey, Rachel.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Rachel, how you doing?
Good.
Are you going to ask how I'm doing?
How are you?
I'm doing damn fine. I'm just so excited to be here to talk about something with you. I'm holding something in particular. Who knows what it could be? Could it be a science fiction television series?
It usually is.
Could it be Desperate Housewives? Finally, we're talking about Desperate Housewives on the podcast?
No, I don't think so. That's not the episode of TV that I watched for this.
Oh, but that's a science fiction television series, Desperate Housewives. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
But maybe the listeners don't know, the younglings out there don't know that the last few seasons...
But it's not relevant to this.
It is. Watch me make it relevant. The last few seasons of Desperate Housewives take place in an alternative future where they had to make up future technology and future problems and still relate it as if it's a normal soap opera. And that's very similar to the television series Babylon 5, in which it takes place in a future where they had some predictions of what would come and what would stay. And don't you just delight in when you go back to older science fiction shows, the things that they thought would be and the things that they maybe got wrong and maybe got right? Rachel, we're nearing the end of Babylon 5, and I want to ask you, out of all of the crazy shenanigans here, do you have a particular favorite of that variety of like, oh, Babylon 5 thought blank would still be a thing or blank would happen in the future?
I don't know. My mind immediately went to Trace for some reason.
Who?
Trace.
Who's that?
One of the bad boys that JMS picked up for an episode.
So your favorite thing is there'll still be British street thugs in the future. My favorite thing is the idea that in, what was it, like 2027 or something, like petrol would be made illegal and motorcycles would no longer exist in the way they used to, and it would be a dying breed. That's one of my favorites. That and newspapers are still in the future, and you can personalize them. But
they get printed on paper.
Yeah.
If you return it, you get like the next
credit.
one kind of free.
It's recycled. But we are here on YumYumPodcast to, yes, indeed, review, rewatch, and discuss episodes of science fiction television. And we are doing Babylon 5 currently, and we are nearing the end of the series, so there's a little bit of a tear forming in the eyes right now. And we wanted to have some guests join us, some people to bring along for the ride toward the end of the show. And we have some recurring guests. They're back. The meddlesome duo are here, Rachel. Your favorites of the Babylon boys. It's Sean.
Put words in my mouth.
Yes, it's Rachel's favorite SS, Sean and Steve.
Hello, I'll take it.
Oh, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. Hello, yeah,
Take
sure.
that,
You'll take being called part of the SS.
The favorite SS.
All right, you know what? Yes, I will. Let's take it.
Yeah, Steve, I can see Steve
appreciate
being okay
it.
with that.
Thank you, Rachel.
I won't comment any
that.
further. I won't comment any further. I'll just say that I think Steve would be especially okay with that. I would not, personally. I just want to make that clear. But that's all I want to say.
And we will never hear from Sean in the rest of the podcast. Thank you for joining, Sean. It was such a delight to have you here for the last ever time. Now, Special Steve, as we like to call him, could you tell us a bit about yourself and the podcast that you're from?
Yeah, I am one of three last best, Babylon 5 viewers for the last best Babylon 5 podcast. Sean and I here have never seen Babylon 5 before. We're going through it the first time, and our friend Ben is a longtime veteran. I think this is third or fourth time for him. And we just finished up over at the podcast.
Yeah, we're done.
By the time this comes out, I think our last episode might be out as well.
I think so.
Depending on when
it'll probably
falls.
run together, yeah.
So very exciting.
When you say last episode, you mean you've reached the total finish line of B5 or just the series? Because
just the series. More. Yeah, last episode of the series. I can't wait to watch Crusade.
There's more. There's a fair amount more that we're still going to be watching. So You can keep an eye out for that. We'll watch Crusade and whatever movies are left, and of course the whatever it was, the Legend of the Rangers or
Of
whatever
course,
that is.
and
that I've
The
heard
Road
is not very
Home,
good.
the newest film.
Yeah, the
that
animated
came out,
film.
where you can hear Phil Lamar play Franklin.
I am
Doesn't that
deeply
Phil.
interested in that. Yes.
The voice of Vamp.
Yes,
Metal Gear Solid
yes,
2.
the voice of Hermes from Futurama. So we
yes.
finally have more Futurama cast members on board for Babylon 5. And yes, since we've had you on, you have now finished the main lot of the show. You have gone through it. You are no longer virgins of Babylon 5. You are now
That's true.
approaching Chad level. You only get to Chad level once you see Edward Woodward's son in Babylon 5. That's when you get to Chad level. That's when you get to that point, when you see his shining bald head. But I want to hear from one of you guys what particular episode of Babylon 5 we are talking about today.
All
We're
my
talking
dreams
about-
turn asunder.
Yeah, all my dreams torn
Gotcha.
asunder. Yeah, well, you won. I get that. I was like, wait, which one was it? It's like, oh yeah, it's all my dreams torn asunder, and all my
You know, my
dreams torn
dreams, they're asunder.
asunder. There's an and in it, so
Oh,
I forgot about that.
And I gave one of you guys a DVD description for this particular episode, and could you hit us with that right now?
I believe that was me that have that. So yeah, I'll read it. It is the beginning of war, perhaps the beginning of the end of the fragile alliance, when Garibaldi's lapse in judgment turns a peacekeeping assignment into an all-out conflict. Yeah, so he fell asleep and he screwed up.
Thank
basically.
you. Thank you, Sean, for the marvelous reading of the DVD description. We
Fell
call that a
asleep at the
Sloppy
wheel.
Sean special on the pod.
Shut up. I didn't say anything.
Who gave off the most yum energy?
I think I'm going to go for a classic. Gonna go for Jakar.
Wow. Why Jakar? Why would you say Jakar is the person that is similar to the Star Trek Discovery moment where a character licked their lips, threw their hair back, and sexily, breathily, hornily said, yum yum?
Just him dealing with Londo. Just loved it.
I also have a contender for someone who deals with Londo, and that's the minister, the very smug minister guy. That man, he is just a breath away from saying yum yum. If JMS wasn't afraid, if JMS was not a coward, he would have let that guy go wild with that line.
If it was just like he's talking to Veer and he sees McBarry's bags in the background, it's like, ooh, McBarry's, yum yum.
I like the idea that a Centauri noble who's probably never left the royal court is thinking of McBarry's. I think about McBarry's all the time. Now, Sean, you're an expert on Babylon 5 now. You know who Trace is, for a start. You know who that is. When we say Jinxo, you can nod and say, that was my favorite character, Jinxo. You even interviewed Jinxo. That's how much of a pedigree you have in this fan base now. And we need to hear from your expert opinion. Who could have said yum yum if given the opportunity?
Well, I would say probably, I don't remember his name, but he was the Centauri guy who just keeps telling Londo that he can't talk to the regent. I don't remember his name.
Same pick as Ryan. He doesn't get a name in this episode.
But he's very I don't believe he has a name, but I think he has a certain quality, like a lot of the Centauri do. A lot of the Centauri actors and a lot of the characters, they just have kind of a quality to them. So yeah, I think he would be my pick.
Would you say they have a yum yum energy to them?
Sure. Yeah.
You don't sound too sure about it. Are you really sure?
Well, sure. That works. That works for me.
I don't trust Slimy Sean with his assuredness there, but Stylish Steve, what do you think? Who has YYE?
I gotta go with Jakar. He's just so He's moving through this episode. He knows what's going on. He volunteers to sit in a jail cell. He thinks it's all a big joke. It's all great. It's all Jakar.
The panel here is divided. It is up to our Yumlings. Please vote at home. Email us at yumyumpod@gmail.com. Who out of the two options had YYE in your opinion? And we'll read those emails, we'll stroke our chins, and if it goes against either of our options, we'll say no.
I don't know about Sean, but I agree that the minister has YYE. He just wasn't my number one pick.
I think Sean agrees with you. He's not too sure about it, but I think he may have an agreement with you there. All right, let's talk about our opinions on this episode. And Rachel, what do you think about And All My Dreams Torn Asunder? What has been your journey with it over the years, over the rewatches?
Yeah, it's just okay.
Wow, Rachel.
Just kidding. It's a great episode. London gets to tear up paperwork and throw it like confetti. What's not to like?
Yeah, I mean, Rachel, you just summed it up very beautifully. What's not to like is a great thing to say in regards to this episode. There's so many moving pieces. There's big plot stuff with the Centauri and the Interstellar Alliance, but it also has some really hard-hitting character work with Garibaldi and Delenn and Zach even and Sheridan. Everyone's getting something to do.
It's beautifully shot by Mira's husband.
Oh, the direction is very standout in this. Steve, And All My Dreams Torn Asunder was the episode that I thought we should have you two on for. So I'm wanting to know what has been your opinion on this episode.
Oh, I loved it when we first saw it, and it was so nice to revisit it because it's just such a great moment of the pieces. Like the season builds up to this. Like this is kind of the tip top. This is when Londo leaves Babylon 5. This is when things start to just kind of go to the end point. It's great. And it has some excellent heavy hitting scenes. Are you kidding me? Zach and Garibaldi, Londo and Jakar, all of the council stuff. And Delenn gets to talk about candles. Who doesn't like that?
She does get to talk about candles. It's not as riveting as when TNG talked about candles. But Sean, what do you think about And All My Dreams Torn Asunder?
Yeah, I mean, I basically agree with what everybody said. I really like this episode. Yeah, it's all been kind of leading to this, and it's really like I appreciate that the show ends in kind of an upsetting place, sort of. I mean, a lot of characters kind of go off and kind of have like kind of interesting endings that are kind of appropriate for their character, but it is like it's pretty rough. Like even after the the Shadow War and everything, there's still a lot of lingering conflicts, and like even the kind of nice kind of peaceful thing they tried to do with the Alliance and everything really is butting heads, and just things are not working the way they wanted. And it's pretty rough. And so I appreciate that, like, yeah, it's one of those episodes where kind of everything blows up. All these things kind of fall apart. And I think, yeah, especially putting it kind of so late in the season, I appreciate, because it's really interesting to have a conflict like this so late in the show. And yeah, it's, again, I'm repeating what everyone else said, but yeah, Jakar is wonderful in this. The stuff with, the stuff with Garibaldi, the acting with him and Zach Allen, I think was really great. Really felt like two friends who were kind of trying to kind of work each other's stuff out, and yeah, an excellent episode.
This is an episode that I very much enjoy. I was on a Last Best Babylon 5 podcast episode to go over Exogenesis, which I revealed at the end was my least favorite episode of the entire show. And it was a real surprise. I was like, really? This is worse than this? And I want to say up top that this is my favorite episode of Babylon 5. Oh. This is my personal favorite. There are ones that I maybe would consider greater, better than, but this is my favorite. This has all of the stuff I like in Babylon 5. It has great Londo material. It has the use of the science fiction, the war, the diplomacy, the interpersonal conflicts, and some of these hard-hitting subject matters with Garibaldi in particular. The acting is phenomenal. It is just so good. And it also has some of my favorite, if not my favorite piece of direction in the series. I am so heartbroken at the fact that Mira Fallon's husband directed this episode, and this was the only one in the entire B5 catalog that he did. He doesn't do any movies. He doesn't do anything in Crusade. And it's such a shame that they brought him in at the last minute, because I would have loved to have seen him do more episodes through the show. He just has such a unique eye in this series, and it makes me fond of this episode. There's certain shot compositions, certain choices in the editing and the way that the characters are framed that have lingered with me. And what I really love about the 5th season, many people do not like the 5th season. Many people think of it as a bit of a slow drudging thing, a little bit too much a little bit too much in the gear of season 1, where it has some goofy stuff, some slice of life, but I love how bittersweet it is. I like that it's tragic in a way, and this episode is a great example of that, in which it's not even as if this episode is an explosion. It's more you're seeing the train start to derail, and it's like that moment before everything collapses. And I love that type of stuff in shows. I love that type of stuff in shows. It's one of the reasons I loved, say, Better Call Saul, in which that's a whole entire series of just that sensation, where it's like, oh, this is like the building blocks towards great sorrow and sadness. And that's what I feel about And All My Dreams Torn Asunder. Rachel, we said it. Mira's husband came in to direct this one. We don't get many people involved this personally within the production to get to direct stuff. We have Stephen Furst is the only cast member in the show to go behind the camera. We haven't had anyone's partners involved outside of Bruce Boxlight and his wife at the time acting in front. But what do you think of the direction in this one?
I love it. Like the moment of Garibaldi sort of falling into that cup.
Yeah, that big glass of his where he's knocked out.
Is just really emblematic of the small deliberate choices that are littered throughout this episode that make it unique and very striking.
Sean, you have noted on your podcast, you both have some of the direction and visuals in the series over the course of your podcast. And I was just curious to hear from you, what do you think about how this episode is presented on that level?
Sure. Well, I think it looks great. I really appreciate a lot of the, I really like how a lot of, whenever they go to Centauri Prime, I appreciate how a lot of that stuff looks. There's a fair amount of, like space stuff in this, because you do see like a little bit more of like some space action with the fighting between, like the Centauri and everything. There's it looks great. It's very, very, very dramatic. Again, especially for this point in the show, like, I don't know, it's just so, kind of haunting, and especially like that kind of those scenes where it's kind of just Sheridan and Delenn kind of just together, like especially the way it kind of starts with Delenn kind of just with her kind of like staying up all night, and that with Sheridan coming in, it's very very moving and very kind of sad. There's a really good atmosphere to that.
They put a lot of emphasis on positioning the camera and moving the camera in a way that we never really got an abundance of. I'm really thinking about that overhead shot, like that almost bird's eye view shot of Londo in the council chambers. We never really got to mount the camera up there and do stuff like that and have people doing a lot of fun business in the background, like when Londo tears up the evidence and throws it in the air, you see Jakar just kind of lunge up, being like, "Oh no, my papers!" and Sheridan quietly calm him down, and just a lot of fun details like that mixed into what is a rather hard-hitting and heavy episode. Steve, what do you think about how this is put together?
It's really thrilling, and the first time we watched it through together, it was a real shot in the arm because, like you said, yeah, there's just so many interesting visual choices. Watching it a second time, you do notice these little details a lot more. Just the way the ambassadors act in those big scenes, the way that certain props or sets look. It was great. My favorite was when Sheridan is screaming at the end and they keep cutting to different angles of him kind of in opposition to himself. It's just really, yeah, like you said, it's a real bummer that this is the only one because this guy, I don't know his name offhand, but he's good. He's good.
Now, we gave you a promise, and we are bound by that promise. And damn you for asking for it. And damn me for agreeing to it. And damn all of us to hell, because that is exactly where we're going. We talked about peace. You didn't want peace. We talked about cooperation. You didn't want cooperation. You want war.
Delenn is trying to sort of right herself, and John's just feeling like a useless tit. And he tries to help a little bit.
Yeah, you have the beginning where she's sitting alone, looking at a candle, crying. She has tears in her eyes, rolling down her cheeks, and John just stands at the doorway being like, Delenn, don't you want to come back into bed? Come on.
Come on, you gotta get some sleep.
And I love the pauses, the silent moments in their exchanges. They just have such a rapport with one another. These actors, they were relied upon to be not only the leads of the show in many ways, but also they're the heart of the show. Their relationship is important, and it's not a casual will they, won't they. They are married. They are going to have a kid soon. Like, they need to be able to sell all of the facets of their relationship. And you know, as someone who's been in a long-term relationship myself, I can really relate to this moment where one of the people in the relationship is suffering and the other one doesn't know what to do, and so they kind of fluff it in a way because he just goes back to bed.
It's like, okay, well, I can't do anything, so I guess I'll get some sleep.
And it's the understanding that you can have the cake and eat it too when it is about relationship drama or exploring the dynamics of a romantically involved couple and bringing it into your large-scale galactic overarching season plot, because they are deeply concerned and deeply worried about having to reveal this evidence to the council that will basically launch them into a war with their friend Londo, and also that everything that they've been working toward has now started to collapse because of this. And you start out the episode and you end the episode by just having this husband and wife lean on each other, and they're not too sure of how to handle this at all. And Rachel, since you're a big fan of this relationship, I mean, how do you feel about season 5 with John and Delenn? Because a lot of it has been living in them having these conflicts about leadership and bringing it into their personal relationship.
Yeah, it's a way to still make their It's a way to still make their relationship interesting without giving them unnecessary relationship drama. It's them learning to live their lives together and still learning about each other, because they haven't been together for years and years, and there's a lot of differences between them in terms of their personality as well as their culture.
It is kind of nice to have a romantic couple at the heart of a show, and it's like, oh, they just have like a nice functional relationship, and it's not super full of drama. Like, the world is full of drama. They have each other, and I guess now that we've seen it all, we could, like, it's nice to know that that's what the show ends on. Like, it's a love story between the two of them. So it's it is refreshing and it's interesting. And I guess the one thing I'll say is I think Delenn really likes those beds that are just flat. You know what? all her talk about no, we sleep is slanted. I don't know. Looks like you get a pretty good night's sleep in those things.
Yeah,
she's
accepted.
I think she had to cave on.
She's half human.
Yeah, she's like, you know what? It's pretty good.
And they agreed to split their time between the quarters. But John still gets a light where he has to raise his arm to turn it on.
That's the future.
That's a cool light. Yeah.
I would love to think that John in the future earned the right to sleep on a flat bed. He just earned it in a real petty way. Just one night, he said, I bought a flat bed, and Delenn was just up in arms. They had a fight about it. And then he just turns around and just says, Lanier. And then she goes, okay, you can have the flat bed. Okay, let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about how my best friend tried to ruin us. Okay, bye, have the flat bed. And then that was it. Because they are petty like that. I love that they are also petty with one another, where they'll just bring shit up like that. It's like, come on. Just accept it. You're right. Oh, you can't agree with me on things. That happened in the last episode, their argument where she just agreed with him and then chastised him.
He's like, no, I just wanted to yell at you.
I think with Sheridan, at least what I like about the way his character has been developed here is that he's not particularly good at what he's doing, especially in this season. He's really kind of in over his head. He's trying his best with a lot of this stuff, but this is almost like it's not even necessarily his fault. Like this issue that he's dealing with the Alliance and with the Centauri is almost like it's almost too big for him to really be able to, or Delenn to really be able to handle, because this is kind of an aftershock effect from the Shadow War with everything that's going on with the Centauri being kind of taken over by these other aliens and this whole other plot happening, which we obviously find out about later on. And so it's just something that's just bigger than them. And to have an external force that is just straight up, attacking everything that he stands for. There's just nothing, and there's nothing he can do about it. He has no control over it. And so, yeah, it's just, he just can't handle it. And I like characters like that. I really like quote unquote hero characters that are kind of out of their league and are really just trying their best. They're trying to be good, and it's just, things are just too big and too messed up for them to really be able to fully have control over it. But they're trying. And so that's very much this, especially the last speech with Sheridan, where he's kind of, yelling at the Alliance about you want a war, you're going to get a war. He's really just fed up. He's tried so hard this whole year, and it just hasn't been working out. And I feel for him.
It's really not what he's skilled at either. That's an element of the struggle too. Is he's basically learning on the job, because he was never a politician. He was always a soldier. Even when he was running Babylon 5, he would always run it from I'm a guy who could get it done by flying my ship out there and shooting rather than talking. He always has found that side a little bit boring, and now this is his job.
Well, see, he shoved it off onto Ivanova multiple times.
And he's tried to shove off all of this stuff onto Delenn multiple times as well, but I'm in an agreement with Sean on this, and with everything he said, it also makes me think about that is basically Babylon 5. This is not a series in which everything becomes a happy-go-lucky Star Trek utopia where we are the best of the best because of our shortcomings. And that is applied to every character, every faction, every race, every group. Many of the themes go back to that. It's great that he forms this interstellar alliance, but it's not going to go smoothly straight off the bat, if ever, because maybe that's just not how human nature works. Just because we have these ideals doesn't mean that everyone is going to be able to enact upon them, because there's multitudes to us, both big and small, both good and bad. And Rachel, Londo is a character that's filled with this.
Yeah, he is. And really struggles in this episode because you see him fight with what he knows to be true and what he is told to believe.
He has to wear the masks. In season 1, he talked about how to be a Centauri, it's all about putting on these different personas, these different masks. And we've seen him over the course of the show have this grand, huge arc. In the last season in particular, he's grown as a person. He has a soul, you could argue. He's grown a conscience. He's held himself accountable for many things. But in this episode, he has to swallow that and go back to being the ambassador. He has to be the representative of his people, and his people are jerks. His people are denying everything, and whether it's because of Machiavellian reasons or not.
He has grown because he goes to jail with Jakar. Season 1, Londo.
Oh no. He didn't want to be in the elevator with him in season 3. He only did that because, he needed to live. But that was something that was really...
And even then he paused.
He was like, could I die right now? I really love the scene where Londo tries to storm into the council chambers, and he's stopped by Zach. You have Zach, you have Veer, and you have Londo. And Londo's using all of that bluster, all of that... he's a big, bag of wind. He's just trying, and he's indignant, but... You feel for him in a way because he's a victim too of his own making.
He wants control back. He wants control back, and he's not going to get it.
No, he's not. And he knows that his people are guilty, but he's not going to admit that to himself or out loud. The fact that all of this is happening is a sign, and it's almost like he goes back into season 1 Londo mode, where he's just this over-the-top person who's just going to say all of these pieces of rhetoric to hopefully get what he wants. And what really lingers with me is after he leaves, you have Veer standing there, as he always does after Londo blows up.
His line is just perfect.
Because Zach Allen tells them that...
Don't make it worse.
Yeah, don't make it worse.
Worse than what?
Worse
than what?
Worse than what, Mr. Allen? And then Veer's gone. And what really hits me about that scene is we've come to a point where the cast of characters, most of them, if not all of them, are no longer trying to get one up on each other. There's no longer that need for ambition to screw over the other person. And it was just kind of sad. It's like they're friends. Zach Allen was having a great time with Veer in the previous episode. They're buddies. They're having a laugh. They're having a good old time. He was joking around about how Veer became a man. And then in this one, he has to look Veer, the nicest person, in the face and tell him to buzz off, that we're going to let this happen and you just have to take it. Sean, when it comes to all of these dynamics at play with the characters over the course of the show, how do you feel about how it comes to a head here when there's these grander conflicts that may get in the way of these people being able to be friendly?
Ultimately, I think this is just a matter of Londo and Veer got kicked out of the group chat, and we're very upset. And basically, Zach was telling them, we're having a meeting here, but the meeting's about... Well, we can't tell you what it's about. And so they're like, you're having a meeting in there about it. You kicked us out of the group chat, and then you started another group chat that's making fun of us. And he's like, well, I can't tell you that. But they know what that's. They know that's, and that's a painful thing when that happens, to get kicked out of the cool kids club. And that's kind of at the heart of this. But I think it's interesting. I mean, it's expected, but I think it's interesting that Londo knows that something is going wrong, really wrong on Centauri, but he still has to he has to perform it. He has to kind of really stick to the party line with Centauri Prime and really be the representative and tear everything up and say that this is all fabrication and all that, even though he knows it's all fucked up. It's a very interesting kind of the two sides of him that you see, the performance and the real Londo.
I think in the moment that he tears that up, he is still hoping that it's a fabrication, that it's really after he sees the footage that he's just like, they fucking played me.
Yeah, he doesn't want to believe it. He definitely, I think that's a big part of it. Absolutely.
Our friend Ben, who's the other co-host of our show, calls it the JMS special, where it's like he'll have these big stories of galactic proportion, but at the heart of all of them are personal stories. And I think this is the epitome of that, right? Like, things are happening, it's totally beyond their control, and their friendships are on the line, their professional lives are on the line, their standing politically is on the line, and it's just like, yeah, there's such pain and there's just such frustration. It sucks, Zach is just doing his job. It doesn't seem like he wants to do it either, but bad stuff is happening, and this is definitely one of the things I like about the show is you reap what you sow, and it's time to punish the people for doing all this bad stuff with the creepy crawlers. So sorry, but at the heart of it, like I said, the JMS special, like at the heart of it is a personal story about personal connections and what that means. So he did it. For every annoying thing JMS does, he does this very, very well. So hats off.
You knew something was going on, but I believe you never knew the shape of it until now.
Don't tell me what you think I know. Still, I suppose I should thank you for respecting my privacy.
G'Kar and Londo are, for many people, the crux of the show. They're the thing that the people love about this show the most. And I'm not surprised to hear from you guys too that is the case as well. But I just want to know from you what it is about their relationship that people gravitate towards, that people like yourself gravitate towards, and how does this episode add to that?
It's so interesting because I think that I remember their dynamic kind of at the beginning of the show and kind of how it was developing. And it really got to a point where I was like, I don't think that these two can ever be anything even close to friends or anything, or even comrades in any way. Like, things just got so bad. And I think if you had told me in season 3 or even 4, I'd say 3, I guess, if by the end of the show, they will be pretty close. I would, be like, oh, I don't like that. I don't
them
think that's
strangling each other is actually an act of mercy.
Season 3 did tell you that they would become friends.
Yes, that is true. And I kind of reserved judgment because I was like, well, I don't know what's exactly going to happen. And that did take place years and years in the future. So I was kind of like, I don't know how this is going to shake out. But really, I think they really did I think JMS did a pretty great job with it. Just because it's not like they're best friends. It's like they're kind of, it's always a little uneasy, but they do have and G'Kar even expresses that kind of part of the reason why he's doing is that he just kind of thinks it's funny. In terms of, and that's hit upon in this episode. It's been hit on previously in the season where he's just like, oh, it would be so funny if I was his bodyguard. Which
he's
is, I think, very, scamp. That's so, I love that, but it feels very, I think just because the actors are so good, it's and the characters are so great, and the way they've been developed and the way they've both grown, it really works. And especially, not jumping ahead too far, but the way it kind of, their kind of last moments together are just very, very affecting. And I think he really nailed it. I really love it. And yeah, it's fun to see it. It's fun to see them have a little back and forth in this. And yeah, it's a delight. I don't know. They're both great. We all know it.
Yeah, I think they really sum up the show, which is I hate to be so pat, but it's this isn't like other sci-fi shows. Things are constantly in flux. Things are constantly moving. There are these shades of not only people, but whole civilizations. We're not, all Narn aren't like this, or not all Centauri aren't like this, or whatever. So these two really are along for the ride. I think they're very true to the core of their character. I don't think that's changed at all. But I think it sums up all of Babylon 5. And despite them just being like two of the best actors, I think that might be kind of the reason too. It's like why people like Spock so much. Spock is Star Trek, and I think these two guys are Babylon 5, like for good and bad. And we all know the bad things Jakar did with his fake eye on his wedding night.
Yeah,
Sheridan's wedding
he's
night.
a little pervert, and he was hanging out with Londo when he did that.
Yeah, well,
don't forget
two little perverts.
But in Londo's defense,
Londo was
in
like,
Londo's
"Hey,
defense,
what are you
he
seeing,
didn't-
buddy? Let me give you the whole."
In Londo's defense, he didn't know he was doing that. He just said it makes you want to wish that you could take an eye and look at them. And it's like, why would you say that, Londo?
Well,
I mean, he's a
and it's
pervert
like, well,
too.
don't you wish you could watch
What's your friend's fuck?
have sex? Oh, don't worry, I am
you
watching
can't-
them have sex right now. Great.
The series is full of characters that are on the gradient of good and bad, and they maybe don't ever fall into the black or white in the main ensemble. And that's actually something that is a point to be brought up in these testimonies, is some people on their face are noble and great and good, but we, the audience, know that there's more to them, and that is when Lanier comes into the picture, because Londo, he tears up all the evidence. He says this is a joke. He makes a fact that it's fake news and that you could take all of this proof and twist it and turn it and jab it and blame anyone with what you've got here. You could point this to anyone, and Lanier comes in to give the evidence, the damning evidence, and the reason that it is bulletproof is Londo knows that Lanier is a good person, that Lanier is
Wouldn't
someone who would
lie.
never fabricate and lie about that. And he looks at Lanier as probably one of the only good people in Babylon 5. Like, oh, Lanier's a great guy. Like, he's criticized me for being an awful person before, but he was probably right to do that. And I just find that such an interesting little twist on things. Is Lanier is a character that all of us have had strong opinions about the character's journey over the course of the show. But Rachel, in this testimony, the Interstellar Alliance is using the fact that Lanier is this person of high regard for everyone. Like, he is.
Yeah, it is. And they don't overplay it. They're like, Ranger Lanier, here, show us the thing, which is very different than the way that they do Franklin and Garibaldi's presentation of evidence, which is methodical. But they let the footage really speak for itself.
They have it projected as a hologram, and then the direction has it projected on the actors' faces, the explosions and the light, and it works really well. And each one of them has a certain reaction to it. Londo, of course, Peter Jurasik is, as stated, he's one of the best actors on the show, and a part of that is he is very good when he doesn't need lines of dialogue. There's so much that he does with his eyes, with his mouth, just his whole entire face,
But he's
and
still
body.
refraining because he's still got the mask on. It slips, but it doesn't fall.
You can see that he's terrified. He's like, oh shit, this is bad. This is very, very bad. There's no way I can explain this. And that's great too, when Londo gets so fucked over that he can't just whip out one of his many great speeches that he uses to get out of a situation. In this one, he just says, I need to talk to my government. I need to talk to them now.
No comment. No comment.
Sean, you're a big Lanier fan. You love that guy. And he's one of your favorite characters, right?
Well,
Sean, you're a real linear head, right?
Now, wait. I'm a big fan of what he did with the motorcycle. I really like that. I'm sad that hasn't shown up, but I like his motorcycle a lot. I mean, I like Bill Mummy. I enjoy him, the Mummy Man. Yeah, I mean, he had a spotless record up to this point. I can see why people would trust him. Despite what happened later, up to this point, yeah, I mean, I understand why people trusted him. It's just, oh boy.
It's hard to go back once you know.
Yeah, it kind of puts a it kind of puts a damper on everything.
Well, there's a
But he was
damper-
fine.
There's a damper
was
here
fine.
too, because in season 1, Londo and Lanier had a fun boys' night out, and they were good. And Lanier would lie for him to save his honor. And in this episode, Lanier is giving them the smoking gun to destroy everything that Londo holds dear. Everything that Londo does is usually in the justification for his personal ambition, but also for the greatness of the Centauri. And now Lanier comes in, this guy that at one time he looked at as just an innocent, naive little child that he should teach a lesson to. Now that person is coming in to make it possible for the Centauri to get thrown out. And it's like, oh, you underestimated Lanier. Lanier is diligent. That's his thing. He's very good at what he does. And now it's come back to bite you in the ass. And that's one of the things I really love about And All My Dreams Torn Asunder and season 5 is there's this sensation of the noose is tightening around certain characters' necks. And although we all hate the Lanier stuff, that's in season 5 the whole way through. Is every time Lanier is here, you are uneasy because you know that there's something deeply wrong there. And that's how I feel about this episode as a whole, is just, it's deeply like uncomfortable and tense because you know that things are not going to go well for many of the characters, Londo especially since we know glimpses of what his future looks like. And I find that also thrilling about the episode, is just this way that JMS seasons it with levity and fun and all of the high stuff of like, here's action and shooting and galactic scale stuff, but also just you are watching a tragedy unfold and you're going to have to take that in. And for yourself, Steve, I mean, you talked about in your discussions on the pod that one of the things that really made Londo's journey in season 5 a little bit uneasy was we know how it ends for him. At least you had the suspicion, like, his future seems like it's going to be that damned future we see from the beginning or from season 3. I just want to know, with this episode, like, how all of the Londo stuff plays into that for you.
I think it's, yeah, and I don't remember where we landed on that, Sean, but it's just like, I didn't know if that was true canon or not. I thought it was at the time. I still kind of do. Kind of seems like it.
It seems that way. Like, it seems like it all leads to that, but it's not 100% confirmed, it seems like. I mean, maybe they do in something later. I'm not 100% sure.
I'll tell you, it seems from what we've gathered in the series itself that that's where it ends for him, is that future where they choke each other out. That seems like where everything is.
Yeah, it seemed that way to me, and it's just like, well, there's something kind of, I think the word of the episode is bittersweet, where it's like, it is kind of thrilling to know how something ends and to see the steps that have to happen to get there. As a viewer, it's nice. It's your brain makes these connections. It feels good. You're like, oh yeah, I can see it. Oh, this is so cool. But it is sad because it's like this guy is doomed. And I think that's the real joy of a science fiction show, is you could have this kind of almost fairy tale logic of like, yeah, this guy is just doomed to be a slave to the evil bug aliens, the invisible bugs. But it's presented in a way that's kind of grounded in the reality of the show. We know, it's bittersweet. It's thrilling. It's a little sad, but it's deeply memorable. That's definitely something you don't see a lot of in shows like this.
Great maker. Sometimes I feel like I don't understand anything anymore.
I liked even in that moment of absolute like hysteria and everything's going amok, and he's like reading out all of the reasons why the Centauri are not going to bow down to this and that we're going to shoot anyone who attacks our ships. He still has, I don't know, I find it a little bit amusing when Sheridan tries to step in and be like, well, Londo, you can't just walk away from this one. He's like, well, funny enough, I thought I already was. Bye. Just leaving. He's not going to be on Centauri Prime alone, Rachel. Jakar needs to come too.
Yes. And I really love the scene where he explains that to Delenn and that she's the one that gets the chapters to keep safe. Like, he thinks about it this time.
Yeah, he's not going to leave his quarters alone for Talon to come in and share his book unless he wants it to be that way. And G'Kar and Delenn, Rachel, talk to us a bit more about this scene and your thoughts on it.
It's just lovely. That's what I would say about it. It's both of these characters being deeply connected and vulnerable, which is so far from where they started in the gathering.
Where she was having to grab out her gravity ring and torture G'Kar because he tried to make a political move. Yeah. And she just glanced over. He's like, I don't like the fact that we were slaves. And she was like, yeah, I don't really care about you, though. You suck. And yeah, you're right. Like, it's a big, like, journey, too. Everyone talks about, like, Londo and G'Kar, but
lots of the characters evolve.
Lots of the ambassadors in particular, because by their very nature, they were opposing groups. They maybe liked each other on the very surface level, but
now
had
they're
their
a
own
part
agendas.
of an alliance.
And they've become friends. G'Kar and Delenn are friends. They know more about each other than how they are political adversaries. They know each other on a deeply familiar level. And
G'Kar gets a lot of mileage about losing an eye and the insights that it's given him to the universe. But it's pretty good.
I love that. I love that whole little speech he gives about how you can look into the eyes of another and hers are enough. It's great material. And Steve, Delenn and G'Kar, they're both very big characters and some of the best actors on the show too. We've already said about Andreas, but Mira is also, in my eyes, a particular standout of the series. And what do you think about this conversation between the two characters in which there's a potential goodbye there?
Mira doesn't get as much, I think, when you're just talking about episodes, because Peter and Andreas just chew the scenery so well, and she isn't that kind of actor, but I think you're right. I think she's just as good as the two of them. She breaks your heart so easily and so consistently. And this scene was great. I mean, this is one of the standout scenes in this episode. Episode full of them. And I think it's exceptional. And like you said, Rachel, like everyone changes so much, and it just, you don't even think about it. And then you're at the end, and it's like, this is truly a show where I remember at the time watching it, I'm like, this could be it. Like, we don't know. We have, 4 episodes left? Like, on any other show, it's like, okay, this is probably going to reset a certain way. With this one, it's like, literally anything could happen. Like you said, this could be a goodbye. It makes it much more, you're on the seat of the edge of your seat, rather, much more than, if it's the finale of Star Trek Enterprise, for example, when you're just screaming and throwing stuff at the TV. But yeah, no, it's, these two are great. I kind of wish we had more with them, but I think what we did have is really special. So who am I to complain?
I mean, it's really, really sweet. And it's very genuine. It's one of those, like, a lot of the kind of character goodbyes at the end of the show are very, very sweet and sincere. And I do think it's one of those things where, and I like it when they do this, where it's very obviously, like, obviously the actors are acting, but it feels like it's very genuinely between the two actors in a way. Like, there isn't really a lot of, like, they're really just kind of tapping into their own emotions for that. Because, they're saying goodbye to each other. The show is wrapping up, and it's very, very sincere. And it's always like, there's always that feeling of, I think that just really comes across. It's very, very touching. And we get to see even more of it, through, with the last few episodes of the show. That's a real highlight. It's very, very sweet.
They go to Centauri Prime, Rachel.
They do. They do. And I really, really enjoyed that establishing like little scene, little moment of Jakar and Londo outside of the palace. Do you want to get more into it?
Oh, it's very reminiscent of when the shadow ships flew overhead on Centauri Prime. There's all of these Centauri warships up above, and it's not going to be good. And Rachel, what do you like about the scene? Because Jakar has something to say about it all.
He's been in this. He's been under these ships before, and he didn't like it then. Doesn't like it now, and that Londo feels threatened by his own people, which is a big difference. Even when he was...
Because he was never scared of the palace until he visited it earlier this season.
No. And even with, his previous run-ins with different political figures, he was never afraid of his people as a whole. He had individual villains within the system.
When Kataja was in charge, he still held true that the Centauri were worth it. They were noble, that they were good, that they were something to be proud of, even if the Emperor was insane, and that's changed now. He's afraid, as you said, like he's really unsure of it all, especially because in his eyes, power means everything, and he's the second most powerful man on Centauri Prime, and he knows jack shit. He knows nothing of what's going on, and they won't tell him. They won't tell him what's going on, but we get some lovely Centauri Prime shenanigans, and B5 boys, I'll pass it over to you. I know you're big supporters and lovers of every time they go to Centauri Prime and you meet a whole cavalcade of weirdos and you get Jakar or Londo just jabbering away at one another. So talk to us a bit about what's been going on Centauri Prime. What's happening? What are they doing?
Yeah, I love just the Centauri. I'm in awe of how many different flavors of weirdo freaks.
They just wheel in a different guy. Yeah. And he's just being such they're always so mean to Jakar. I really like when they're really mean to Jakar, and Jakar is just kind of throwing it back at him. It's delightful.
Yeah, Jakar takes it all in good humor, but yeah, like they're just straight up racist to him. And it's just like, oh yeah, so that's how it is down here. And of course,
Jakar has like ascended. I really like the season 5 Jakar, where he's kind of just ascend. Like he's been through all of his major struggles, and he's kind of just ascended past all of it now, and just nothing. Like it's just all he's just Teflon. Like everything, just nothing can phase him at all. Even when they tell him they're gonna throw him in jail, he's like, do it. I don't give a shit. Fine, I've been there before. Go for it. Like he just it's fun. It's very, very fun.
It's a natural musk. I quite enjoy it.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, good for him. And he knows the ladies love it. He knows it.
The Centauri are just, I love them too. They're just such absolute monsters. Each time you see them, you're guaranteed a new level of just absolutely shocking behavior. And I don't know how to feel exactly, but they're still, even in this moment, presented as very arched and silly. And so very rarely do I find their level of, I guess, bigotry to genuinely be that upsetting. It has its moments, like they do have it throughout the show, but in this episode, it's like, of course, it's just kind of like you laugh at them. It's like, oh, guys, don't you realize that everything is falling right now and you're still doing this shitty little game of tit for tat with this Nan here? And when the stuff all fires off and they're at war with one another now, like, oh, we're finally at war with the Interstellar Alliance. This minister comes in and he's fucking loving it. He's like, yes, we're at war. But one of his first things he wants to do is, now that we're at war, we have a legitimate reason to arrest that filthy Nan. It's like, guys, your priorities. Your fucking priorities. Can you figure those out for us?
No, but they have figured them out. That's the thing.
Yeah, they're dumb.
Yes.
But that's what I mean. I love that. Like, there's still, it's like when Londo described the whole guarding the flower. Where it's like, you have to guard that's how it all works. That's how it works here. It's like, oh, instead of like worrying like Londo does about how this will all spin out of control and that perhaps we should try and stop it, they're just all fuddy-duddies and weird like this. And Londo tries to be a good man. Rachel, he tries to be a good guy. He wants to stand with Jakar.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What does that get him?
Thrown in jail with Jakar. And his little moment of like, don't you know who I am?
No, he's not stupid enough to imprison his own prime minister.
Yeah, he is.
That is like such a sitcom comedy cut moment.
It is. It's great. It's a great moment of levity in this really dark moment. And then they're just left there. Just left. Zooms out. You see little Londo's face.
And he says something along the lines of, sometimes I feel like I don't know what's happening anymore. Reminds me of Sinclair at the end of season 1.
Yeah.
Nothing's the same anymore.
The Garibaldi angle of this is it's really hard to even want to talk about because it is. I find it too real in how upsetting it is with Londo. It's like, oh, we can talk about all these great themes and messages and overarching things and the JMS special and all of that because like Londo's like a really fun TV show character, but Garibaldi, especially with the stuff he's going through in this episode, it's deeply
sad.
Yeah, it's just fucking depressing. Like but it's earned. Like it's good. It's good. Like it's done very well, but it's very, very upsetting for a character too. That I think it's fair to say that all of us here on this podcast have not been the biggest fans of. And Sean, Garibaldi as a character for you, I know that you've not been the biggest lover of him overall, but with season 5, some of that has begun to shift over because of how they've definitely handled his alcoholism. And I'd like to know more from you about how you feel about it and in this episode.
Yeah, I honestly I think some of Jerry Doyle's best acting has come from this. I feel like, especially with when he kind of gets to do a scene like the one he has with Zach here. He gets some very good ones, I think, later on with Lockley and with some other characters with Sheridan. But really here with Zach, it feels very sincere. I especially really like that, just how blunt Zach is with him, just telling him that, that he's drunk and that his hand-eye coordination sucks, which is very blunt language sometimes for a show like this. And I appreciate. I don't know. Like it's it's probably the most vulnerable place we see Garibaldi in. It's kind of like his big vice. We saw a little bit earlier on in the first season of the show. Hasn't really come up too much since then, until really kind of later on here. And honestly, I thought like there's a lot of pain in it. There's a lot of like knowing pain. And honestly, I think a big part of it obviously is the writing too. I think that's from JMS. It feels like it's coming from a very real place. So I think it really adds to it. But honestly, I like that they're kind of grappling with this. It feels very sincere. It doesn't feel jokey. It doesn't feel inappropriate. It feels very it feels very appropriate for his character to be dealing with this. So I thought Garibaldi's not really my favorite. I don't think he'll ever be necessarily, but like this is probably some of his best character work in my opinion.
Rachel, how has this storyline and this scene in particular impacted you and or changed on the rewatches?
It's one that I always forget is coming, and then I find it very striking because, as you pointed out, the they've set up this fault in Garibaldi from very early on. So when we get it re-established, you're like, okay, well, what's it going to fuck up this time for falling asleep? Because we had it on the Drazi homeworld as well.
Yeah.
And then I always find that I am just internally screaming at Sheridan when he gives Garibaldi this responsibility. Like, no, anybody but him, please.
But how's Sheridan
Please.
But how's Sheridan to know?
But then he says, oh, I knew, but I didn't want to admit that I knew. And it's just like...
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I get it. He's the person that's in charge. But they could have picked anybody else.
Oh, of course. But he's also the important person. What I really like and what you're saying too is this storyline isn't just about how it affects Garibaldi. It's not just about how his actions may move the needle forward for whatever the plot is, but we also get to see how it influences people around him and how it makes them feel and how they respond to it. We've now had 3 characters say to Garibaldi in different ways, I know you have a problem, let me help you. We've had Franklin reach out.
You are going to destroy your life if you don't let somebody help you.
We've had, we exactly. We had Franklin do it in a very quiet way, very matter of fact. He leaned over to him before we went out and just said, hey, if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. And he left it at that. Then we had Lise respond as the partner, and she was pissed off. She was upset with him. She put ultimatums on him. And now we have Zach Allen come in, someone who's also recovering, and he has he takes it very personally, and he just says things, as Sean's mentioned, in a very matter-of-fact way, in a very blunt way, in a way that Garibaldi maybe needs to hear. But also, since he is so personal, he perhaps can't take those extra steps to help Garibaldi that Garibaldi may need, because he lets Garibaldi off the hook in this moment because he trusts Garibaldi. He wants the best for Garibaldi.
Also, their relationship is built on second chances.
That's it. That's the strength of the relationship. But also here we see how that can be something that can be detrimental in the long run too. And Steve, Garibaldi is a character that for all of his grand stuff, he's always been a character that's full of faults, and perhaps at times it's hard to recognize if the show is aware of how bad he can be. But in this last season, or even 2 seasons, Garibaldi's been very much thrown in the mud and had to lay in it. And I want to know how this has been working or not working for you. How do you feel about season 5 Garibaldi, or the later stages of his character, in which he, out of the main cast, like out of the Earth like human cast, he has to crawl through broken glass to potentially get a good ending?
It comes back to acting, and Sean said it earlier, where it's just like, I gotta give it to him. I have not been a big fan of Garibaldi in the past. Just the character as written was just like, oh, this is a character I don't like. But this has been a pretty compelling story, and Jerry Doyle is doing, like Sean said, I think the best work of his career, at least in Babylon 5, like telling this story about how Garibaldi is kind of falling and pushing people away. I don't know if this was intentional behind the scenes stuff. I understand that he did kind of relapse around this time, and JMS was trying to maybe nudge him away. I don't know if that was part of it, but whatever the case, it was good. This is my favorite Garibaldi for sure. It was the last season Garibaldi.
There is behind the scenes about this, and yes, Jerry Doyle was drinking too much, and JMS tried to talk to him, and it wasn't really working, and So he wrote this storyline to kind of examine it more and to hopefully connect with Jerry Doyle more. And also in the later part of season 5, Jeff Conaway was also struggling with addiction again. And so that's why Zach Allen is also roped into this too. It's basically, this is a scene in which the characters are having a conversation with one another, but it's also, in the meta sense, it's JMS wishing that they could be able to have this conversation together too, and it would hopefully do something. And sadly, for both the actors in this storyline and scene, they both had terrible endings due to their addictions. Jerry Doyle drank himself to death, and Jeff Conaway's circumstances were horribly documented on reality television for everyone to see.
Yeah, very
and
sad.
It makes the scene really hard to watch if you know that stuff, and even if you don't. I think what makes it difficult for me is these two guys, these two characters, have been for a long run of the show presented as, schmucks, as just common guys, even if they're high-ranking security or in charge of spies. Like, in the group, they're presented as kind of sillier, a little bit more fun, and then when you get to see Zach Allen be dead serious and put his gun on the table, it is just, it rips your heart out, because it's like, whoa, if Zach Allen is having to sit you down right now and talk like this, it must be real bad. And that's not to say anything bad about the character. It's one of my favorite characters, but that's the thing, is it's like, if a guy who's just like I just want to keep my head down low and get a steady paycheck, if he's having to come in and tell you this, then it's real hard stuff. And I think too, this is Jeff Conaway's best acted scene in the show. I think this is probably his best. I always look back on this one as one of the great examples of the great potential he had as an actor, because many people know him for Kenickie, of course, or for his comedy work in Taxi and shows and movies like that. And Babylon 5 gave many of these actors the opportunities to flesh out and stretch out those acting muscles that maybe you didn't get to see a lot of in their career. I mean, Peter Jurasik's the same. He was a comedy actor. He's a little funny guy in NYPD Blue, not NYPD Blue, Hill Street Blues. He's just like the snitch. In this show, he gets to be probably one of the most dramatically compelling actors here. And there is a great quote I have. I don't often whip out the JMS quotes, Rachel. You know this.
I do.
We've actually had people ask, why do we never refer to the Lurker's Guide on this? And a part of it is, like, I like to just go off of what the show gives me. I don't always need JMS to talk to me about it, which, hey, by the way, love the fact that he's there to talk to, and he's documented a lot of stuff that, especially in this era, many creatives didn't. Not every show was having the creative people talking to you on the web or anywhere about like this, unless you had a panel or something. But I wanted to bring this up because I really like this JMS quote. So this is him talking about some of the differences between Babylon 5 and, say, Star Trek or other properties in the sci-fi realm, and it kind of ties into this. So he says, the Star Trek universe seemed to say that for us to go into the stars, we have to leave behind an important part of ourselves, the good, the bad, our vices, our avarice, our commercialism, but also our faith and our beautiful fractures. And I thought, no, we will still carry that with us. When settlers came to the Americas from Europe, they didn't leave behind their culture, they brought it with them. It gave them a continuity in a new world. So it was important for us to show that continuity. We see religion, alcoholism, drug abuse, all the things that ennoble us or plague us carried into the future. You bring the beauty as well. That's what JMS had to say about plot lines like this.
You're an alcoholic, Michael. You can't just have a few drinks and get over it. You can't justify it or explain it. You can't play the feel sorry for me game or you're no better game. And if I'm pissed at you, it's because I'm your friend. And I know what you've been through to get here. I've been through the same thing myself, and I don't want to see you throw it all away.
I think it's that moment of the show, everyone's favorite bit. It's Rachel's favorite bit because I make the joke about the Michael Keaton film Spotlight. But no, we're not talking about Mark Ruffalo's film Spotlight. We are in fact talking about Spotlight, the part of the show where we talk about an actor or actress that appeared in the given episode. Go over their performance, any interesting pieces of trivia or things that we may have seen them in over the years. And who are we talking about, Rachel?
The Minister.
The Centauri Minister guy?
Yeah, he gets a name next episode, but I can't remember what it is right now.
Not in this episode. And he's never credited with that name. He is given it, but he's never, he's always Minister, which is funny. But who's the actor?
Well, which of his names was he credited by in this episode?
Tom McCreevy?
Okay.
I do believe. Tom, T-O-M, not T-H-O-M, which is a point of contention in his catalogue of work. He's very confusing to me.
T-M.
Yeah, but we will talk about the confusion of this actor's life or name in a moment. But Rachel, what do you think about this performance? We've seen
He's
a lot.
having fun. I like it. I like him. He's another Centauri freak.
We have so many of them during the show. What makes any of them stand out after a certain point?
I feel like I need to give that question to Steve.
I mean, Steve, you are a little bit of an expert on Centauri freakdom.
Yeah, he's like the different flavors that you get for these Centauri freaks. Like you get these real sniveling people and these real like loopy people. He's just like really. There's a formality to him. You know, like he feels like he's always announcing something. Like his chest is always full of air.
He's arrived and he's on business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he's also a freak, you know? So it's just like he's about to use a very deep and commanding voice to say something like really just unacceptable.
Rachel, that's some great insight, but what were some favorite little moments in the episode or the previous that you've seen when it comes to this character and this performance? Because to me, it is the voice as well.
Yeah, it's the voice, and I think he manages to do a really good job at being a presence on like the screen within the screen, which is not a skill that everybody has. Like, he feels connected to the scene that's happening secondary, like to him, like, because the majority of his moments are him talking via the Babcom to somebody on Babylon 5. And then we get the delight of him in person as well. So that does help him feel real when he's not physically in the same space as the characters.
He feels like a jock to me. Like, he feels like somebody who would have played high school football now that they've somehow worked their way up to being a college professor, and he hates you because he has such a smugness, and he has like this big chin and jawline. Like he's just got this look of like, yeah, I've played rugby in my time, and don't you know me, Londo? He's just such a smug I kept writing smug. This guy, what he brings to the Centauri is a level of smug, and it's not like he is masterminding like other ones. He's not conniving.
Arrogant. He's just, that's not his style.
Yeah, he's just such a worm, and there's just something off about him every time he shows up. He's just like, something's off about you.
You can tell that he's a conniving worm.
He reminds me of the guy who plays Littlefinger in Game of Thrones, and then I found out it's like, because they're both Irish and they both have that very specific way of talking where they enunciate a certain way, like Patrick McGoohan does too. Like if people you don't know Patrick McGoohan, obviously watch The Prisoner, but also watch his episodes of Columbo. But like when you get these Irish people and you throw them into American shows and you go, now sound posh while you're being a prick, it just adds a certain ooze to it, and I just really love that. Sean, Centauri are always wonderful to see, but also Babylon 5 consistently throughout its run brings in these type of little guest spot actors in which you can always rely on Babylon 5 having a guest actor that is delightful to see, while Star Trek, you're not always guaranteed that. Star Trek, it's like, well, you may be guaranteed boring guest spot actors, if not. But Babylon 5, they always bring in like these kooky guys. And I want to know for you, as someone who does a podcast where you talk about like the strange men of Babylon 5, what is it about like someone like him that it just has that factor to it all?
I think it's just fun with Centauri, where it's kind of just like, I don't, yeah, it's the JMS just has this, I don't know, he's good at picking out these, just like these weird little freaks to kind of come on and kind of color the show a little bit. And it's kind of just like, this guy is, yeah, like, I really like that he's just so, and not only smug, but just like, it's that addition of being kind of dismissive. Like Londo is asking something very reasonable, which is just to talk to the regent and just figure out what the hell's going on. Like he is the prime minister at this point, and like, you know, it's a pretty prominent position. And this guy just keeps deflecting, and not only deflecting, but kind of making Londo, giving Londo the impression that he is the one who is being too much, and like he's asking unreasonable questions, very kind of gaslighty in that kind of way. Yeah, it's just like, it's really fun. Like he can just, JMS knows how to get these, just for these roles that where these characters show up for like sometimes just one episode. In this case, maybe just like a few with this guy. And it's kind of just like, they're just very memorable. They stick in your mind.
Now, I want to bring up a debate that's been had for many years about this one character. And I don't know if you guys have had it yourself, but do you think this guy has a keeper, or do you think he's just a dickhead? Because that's been a question asked, because he is very weird, and he keeps talking in weird ways like the Regent does at times too, but it's never stated, and I just want to know, because I can flip a coin on which I think it is at any given point. Steve, what do you think about this guy? Do you think he's just one of the Centauri stooges, or do you think he's a creepy crawler stooge?
I didn't even think that he might have a creepy crawler on him, just like, because he just toes the Centauri line so well. I guess I wouldn't be surprised if in some novel, or maybe even in the new animated movie, they reveal he had a little creepy crawler. That would make sense. But I think, to me, it's more interesting that he just so blindly follows the party line with such gusto. It doesn't matter what the Regent says. Just, he'll do it anyway. Yeah, he's gonna, if the Regent says to commit this kind of like acts of war, like, yeah, he'll do it.
I mean, that's interesting, because I actually was under the impression that he probably had some kind of keeper on him. I actually didn't even really consider that he wouldn't, which is interesting. But that, I mean, it makes sense that he wouldn't, because yeah, I mean, I think I don't know, I guess I could go either way, I guess, because it's really like, I can see him just being kind of just such a stooge. But I think for me, I guess because it was just so pointed to me that he was just like so unquestioning, like just to the point of like not even. But then again, it's like, yeah, well, actually that actually tracks.
That's the Centauri.
Yep.
Yeah. So actually he might not. Now that I think about it,
Rachel,
on this viewing, I thought, no, he's just scum that has risen to the top of the pond because the Drak have slowly been cleaning out the palace.
I think he's just a stooge. You know what gave it away for me? So I've been like Sean. I'm like, oh, I just assumed he would, or just how vehemently he is, going through the party line that the Drak are putting out there. But what gave it away to me to think otherwise was he talks to Veer in this episode too, by the way. Veer calls him up, and he does this whole fucking song and dance bullshit about how Londo's just too busy right now. He's doing the same thing that he does to Londo about the Regent, but now he's doing it to Veer about Londo. And Veer's getting worked up, and what the actor does, and this is so minute, and watch it again, you can tell the character is having fun fucking with Veer. And that, to me, says that this guy probably doesn't have a Drak. He's just probably a prick. I think he's just probably a piece of scum, as you said, who's risen to this position and he's loving it. He's just loving being able to screw people over because that's the Centauri. They find this excuse to rise to power so that they can just put out their petty vindictive bullshit. I just really love that. And again, we're talking about this guy who doesn't even really get a name. He's mainly on the TV screen for a lot of his episodes, but he just has such a cadence to the way he does things that he's one of the memorable Centauri ministers out of like, how many have we met? We've met like so many Centauris and they're all great. And I'm wanting to know from our guests, was there anything when you looked at his work, was there anything in there? Because he doesn't actually have a very long catalog of work. He's one of those people who has like, I think has like less than 10 things to his name on IMDb.
Yeah, I guess I was just shocked that this was the last thing he did because he's just so good in it. I was like, oh, geez, that's it for this guy?
Yeah, I
seems
wasn't
like he's
really...
still alive. So I mean, I don't know. He was great.
Yeah, he was very, very good. Yeah.
So nothing else you've seen with him in it?
No, I don't think I've seen anything else with him in it. No.
Yeah, I've never seen like.
Not that I recall.
I've never seen the
Ryan?
Hulk show. I've never seen.
I've watched I've watched a Hulk show, but I cannot recall. There's so many one-off people there. But I was interested in a show that has my name in it. That's that's his most recurring. That was his longest run. Ryan's Hope, I do believe it's called, in which it's a show about Irish American family in New York, I do believe. And the show had Kate Mulgrew in it. It had Janeway in it. Janeway. And he's in like over 200 episodes of this show. And it's like one of the first things he did. And it's like, oh, okay. And I was just curious of what his deal is because you look him on IMDb and all it says is like, oh, he was born in Dublin in 1946 or something like that. And it's like, oh, and he did like these handful of things. And that's it. That's all you get. And there's no other information. And so I was like, what's his story? What's his deal? And it's like, the only way I could track any of it together was by looking at some of the things he did and being able to figure it out. And it seems like it's kind of up in the air, but like, he came over to America at some point during the mid to late 70s to be able to do this show because this show seemed to be like it was in America because there's a lot of American actors with also some Irish character actors in there too. And yeah, I just find it interesting because also it's like Kate Mulgrew's an actress that I like very much, but I will be honest, I don't know her work very well. Like I know her from three or four things in particular. Like I know her from Voyager. I know her from Orange is the New Black. I love her in Throw Mama from the Train where she's a bitch. She's just an absolute worst person ever. And I was just kind of fascinated. It's like, oh, she was in like a show where she did like double the amount of episodes that she ever did for Star Trek. And it's like, does anyone know this show? Does anyone know this show's existence now? It's just, that's just how it goes. Like some of these go for like thousands of episodes and then once they're done, it's like no one thinks about them. They're gone. They're in the ether.
Especially ones from that time.
It doesn't matter. Why really doesn't matter. What counts is what you are. And what you are is a lying, manipulative, selfish, self-indulgent, destructive, over-emotional little witch.
He has an evolution of his name, essentially. So our working theory is that he further, like, I want to say anglicized, but it's just like that doesn't really...
Americanized his name.
Americanized his name to make it less overtly Irish.
More palatable, I guess. Or it could be other actors have this name too. So he was originally Thomas McCreevy, so M-A-C, not just M-C, Creevy. And yes, Thomas, T-H-O-M. And then it made me go, oh, well, he used to be called that. Maybe I could find this actor, because there's no way to find this actor, by the way. I don't know if he's still around. I don't know where he is. I don't know what he's doing. Like Steve, I was like, where's this guy? No website. Where's this guy? Does he do theater? Does he do ads? Like, what's his deal? Because after B5, it's just like this guy disappeared from the face of the earth. Is he back in Ireland? Who knows? And then it's like, oh, he used to be credited by this name. Maybe I can find him under this name. No, there's another actor by that name who's 93 years old and was in the Naked Gun movies.
When I looked his name up, on Ancestry, it did come up with a John Thomas McCreary that died in 95. And I was like,
That would be before this.
that doesn't make sense. That doesn't line up. That's not him.
Oh, there's like an Irish poet with this name too. And then there was like another version of his name that we found. It was again like Tom, but Tom, but McCreevy spelled differently again. And he did like one other acting role in something else under that name. And it's like, you could look it up on IMDb. And it's like, what? And then there's another Tom McCreevy who was in like a bunch of horror movies in the 80s, like in Waxwork. And it's just like, oh no. So we have nothing really to say about this actor other than
he is a mystery.
He's like he went into the Bermuda Triangle with Babylon 5. We've never found him again.
But even then it would be more documented.
He just disappeared. I don't know what's his story. Usually we find, even with actors with smaller credits to their name than this guy, things. He's just gone. You know what he did? He did his 3 guest spots on B5 and said, that's the finest acting work I've ever done in my life. And then he just disappeared into the wind. He just blew away.
Maybe he just retired. I did find some Thomas McCrearys that were like business professors.
I found one that runs a blood bank. Too many. And they all look the same. They all look like old Irish guys.
Invented an apparently new version of meditation.
Oh, yeah, I saw that too. So, yes, Tom McCreevy is an enigma. If you know anything about him, please email us at yumyumpod@gmail.com and let us know if you think we need... Steve, please say it again.
We need to know.
We need
Please.
answers. We need answers.
We need answers, listeners. We need to know who this man is. We need to send him a bouquet of flowers to say thank you for what you did on Babylon 5. We need to find him.
And we need to ask, do you think he had a keeper? And he says, what's that? I didn't watch the show. I just starred in those episodes and was told to play smug. And so I did. And God bless you. You did it well, sir. And all my dreams torn asunder. We have finally reached the end of it all. And on our rating system of Yum being bad and Yum Yum being good, where do we align this? Do we put it in the Yum? Do we put it in the Yum Yum? Rachel, how do you feel about this?
Yum yum. Yum yum.
You sound so upset in your Yum Yum.
Because it's like, why did you bother asking? Why did you bother asking? We've said nothing bad about this episode at all.
Is there a bad thing? I guess the only questionable thing is there's a random action scene with Franklin that happens. Hey, Via, we need to help you.
Yeah, we did just kind of ignore that.
Oh, that scene rules. That scene was
fun.
so awesome.
Yeah, I want to express my support of Franklin kicking ass. Yeah,
okay.
I'm fully in support of
I'm
that.
for it, but it's just such a weird thing to like. Why did JMS write that?
Why not?
Okay.
Why not?
We're
A
doing this
little
now.
action. We want to see some blood get spilled.
Sean,
Hell yeah.
Are you gonna dare be a contrarian and give this episode a yum?
No. I mean, I really like this episode, so I give it a yum yum.
Yum yum.
I'm a fan, of course. This is my favorite episode of the show. It still is. I still enjoyed it as much as I was expecting to, if not more. It caters to all the things that I want of the show, and I give it a yum yum.
Yum yum.
Steve, where are you? Not only just spiritually speaking, but on the yum yum plane.
Well, I'm in Chicago, Illinois. It's a city in the Midwest in America. But I love this is a yum yum. This is an excellent episode, one of the best.
Yum yum.
We need to hear what is up next on Babylon 5.
On the next Babylon 5.
Well, folks, you're going to love this. Episode 17, Movements of Fire and Shadow. Drazi and Narn militarists upend Sheridan's efforts to maintain a unified front in the war with the Centauri. Malari experiences a close encounter that's mysterious and perhaps life-altering.
Why were you laughing there, Steve? What was so funny? It's life-altering.
It is. A man takes off his shirt and throws some goo at him.
No, that's not that episode. That's someone after. This is the episode where they drag him in and they put some alien fingers in his mouth and put
it. Does lead there.
Okay,
It does lead there. It does lead to a man.
It does give us the introduction of Wayne
a freaky
Alexander
alien
as my favorite alien.
Yeah, where he throws his off and he's like, get it on me, and they have a little bit of a. That's a real.
Sean, you're going ahead.
Scene.
You're going too far. Calm
I know,
down.
but it's
calm
a really
it down,
good scene.
Sean. Leave it for your show.
Really
Leave it for your show. We
very,
know who's getting the sex person this season. It's that guy.
Got me
Calm it
very
down.
excited. Good stuff.
Thank you so much for coming on, both of you. This is your last time on YumYumPodcast talking about Babylon 5. T-roll down your face.
Bittersweet.
It is bittersweet, unless you want to do Crusade too. Who?
We're not.
Ryan's declared that from the start.
Look, if you pay us like $1,000 dues a month, we'll do Crusade.
Yeah, well, we're doing it.
I don't look. Don't get me wrong.
it.
I don't hate Crusade. I just don't like it very much. It would be interesting to talk about Crusade only in the capacity of what a failure it is, and I already do that with Discovery, so I've got my
I have no idea
satisfaction.
what to expect. I don't know anything about it. I have no idea what to expect. So in that regard, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, expect. Do you know the character of Warren Keffer?
I know him. He's the only. He's my favorite character in the show.
Do you remember how he came about?
Great. Yeah.
Network interference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Enjoy that with Crusade.
Oh, I see. All right. So we're gonna have a lot of Warren Keffer. So Warren Keffer is back.
This is a winner.
I'm not saying Warren.
back.
I'm not saying there's Warren Keffer in it. I'm just saying expect TNT to say, "Hey, we want a voice in the show now too."
Ooh,
so,
fun.
but no wrestlers.
Get
up
Ted
here.
Turner to give his notes, and that's gonna be good.
JMS goes over in his autobiography the horrifying notes that TNT would give him, but that's a story for another time. That is all we have to say. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and thank you, boys, for coming on. You have finished the main lot of the show, but you still have things ahead of you. So please tell us all about your podcast again and where it can be found, where you guys are at on the interwebs.
Well, see if you want. I'll do it. So it's the last best Babylon 5 podcast, and we have now. I mean, if you start listening to the podcast, Steve and I are newbies to it. Our co-host Ben is the only one who's seen it. But we have ascended to Ben's level. We have seen everything Ben has seen.
You're like Jason Einhart. You have become
all of the main show. So you can watch us grow and learn from Babylon 5, and then from here on out, you're going to get to see us not only watch Crusade, all these other movies, the new
Legends
movie
of the Rangers,
but of course Legends of the Rangers, which is going to be the big blast. That's going to be a 12-hour episode. Because I know that I think that one's going to be special.
Don't underestimate the Lost Tales. I keep joking. You keep thinking I'm joking, but don't underestimate. Everyone keeps fucking slamming. I'll just say this. And Ben, if you're listening, which he doesn't, if you listen and you say this is a spoiler, fuck you. But if you think Legends of the Rangers is a staggering low point, wait till you get to Lost Tales. Enjoy.
I'm going to be blunt and say that I don't, maybe this is controversial, but I don't particularly care about any of this getting spoiled. At this point, like if you spoiled the show for me, that I would be upset. But if it's any of this stuff,
if you say to me, Ryan, are you saying blank isn't in Lost Tales? How could that be? Well,
oh no, it's like, Warren Keffer's not in Lost Tales.
I mean,
look, if I said he was in The Road Home, would that make you feel better?
Only if they got Robert Russler.
I'm not promising that. I think he's done with B5, but he never talks about it. If people ask him at conventions, he asks for someone else to give a question out. He did not have a good time with the show, evidently. And JMS still defends treating him like shit on Twitter. He had JMS fucking tore me apart on Twitter because I was like, I feel bad for the actor, and he just says, well, that's an actor's life. They sign up for what they get. I'm like, well, I don't think he signed up for that. He signed up to be a lead actor in the show. And he goes, well, there's no promises. I'm like, well, his contract man said otherwise, bitch. He's in the opening credits.
Yeah.
But enough Keffer talk. You guys talk about Keffer enough. Last Best Babylon 5 podcast. You're on all the podcatchers on the internet and social media. I don't even know if you exist there anymore.
Oh, we're on Instagram.
Yeah, I don't know. We update, but that's where we are now.
Yeah, on Instant. Oh, and on Blue Sky. We have a Blue Sky.
Are we on Blue Sky? We do.
Yeah, we're on Blue Sky. I think we are. Yeah.
Sean says
discovering about his own podcast.
Sean's saying that as he's creating a Last Best B5
we're on
Blue Sky.
I think we're on there, or maybe we're not. I thought we were.
And don't forget about Threads.
I don't think we're not on Twitter anymore. Because
you mean X?
X, whatever.
They're on Instagram, so
we're on Instagram. I can confirm that we're on Instagram. Yeah,
they might be on Threads by default.
It's true.
Yeah.
You could have been lured into the thread. We are on all of those social medias under YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast. You can enjoy what we share on there and see us interact with the Babylon Boys from time to time. If you are not following us on the podcast hosting site that you are listening to this on, you should. You should do that so you get updated on when we release new episodes of our discussions on Babylon 5, or you can go back through the back catalogue and hear us talk about Star Trek Discovery. We even had Steve on for a Star Trek Discovery episode. Sean, I would have loved to have had you on for Star Trek Discovery. Hey, how about this? The last season of the show's coming out. How about you watch all of it in preparation so that you could come on and talk to us about David Cronenberg asking them to fix a Rubik's Cube. That's literally the plot of the final season.
I guess it would be interesting to see one just completely out of context. But
context is for kings.
I don't want to watch.
Isn't that right, Steve? Context? It's for kings, isn't it?
God, I like that line, but I don't like that anything else. Except I love Saru.
We all love Doug Jones. But
good thing they trashed Saru's character.
You can hear us talk all about that on other episodes, and we have our Patreon where you can hear us talk about a whole buttload of stuff. We're going through the Star Wars movies right now.
That is where you can contribute to the $1,000 a month that will make Ryan agree to do Crusade.
I will perhaps buy it on DVD if you give me $1,000 right now. Perhaps I'll buy it on DVD. My parents have the DVD of it right now. I don't have it in my house. I don't want it near my B5 DVDs. It's gross. How dare you? Although it does have a very handsome Daniel Day Kim on the cover. And that's, I mean, if you have a picture of Daniel Day Kim in your house, then it's worth something. He's a handsome,
You're blessed.
It's the Chad Doctor from The Good Doctor, for fuck's sake. He's there to be told that man's a surgeon.
But Ryan, there is something that we've left till last. We mentioned the scene. We didn't mention this moment because I think both of us were a little disappointed.
Heartbroken.
Sean, Steve, do you know what we're talking about?
SS, do you know?
No, I'm along for this journey, yeah.
You think they would have been on the pod before?
Yeah.
You think they would remember how we end these?
Yeah.
Go on.
Jakar thumps his chest.
He does that a lot during the show.
Yes, he does. He does it, and it's a beautiful moment. And Delenn does the Minbari goodbye.
The hand in the air. Yeah.
He holds back. He doesn't say it out loud because he's just so overwhelmed with the moment that they're sharing, the gratitude and thanks that's being communicated through their eyes.
I blame his new eye for stopping him from saying it.
He doesn't say good eating to you.
In the gathering, he walked up to Takashima, and when he was finished talking to her, he made it prominent that the non-farewell was tapping the chest and saying good eating to you, because that's the alien way of saying goodbye. And then JMS, Mr. I follow up on everything, doesn't follow up on that. And guess what else he doesn't follow up on? He never references Takashima again outside of the gathering either. Not even a, hey, Takashima. Never names drops her, never mentions her again. Dog,
Why did I
coward.
think there was a line where it's like, she's been missing for over a year?
No, that's Catherine Sakai.
That's,
Your thing, the closest we get is Ivanova. You're new here. That's it. No Takashima love from this show.
No,
you talk about
she gets
Kefir.
credited with the coffee plant.
No.
Right?
Ivanova is like, I have a coffee plant that it transports onto Ivanova. This show hates Kefir and Takashima with equal measure. At least one of them gets referenced more. And that is, weirdly enough, Kefir. But good eating to you, Sean. Good eating to you, Steve.
Thank you. We will eat well.
To you as well, yes.